For me, I think Moho can replace a lot of what Adobe Animate has done. So let's get that out of the way up front. This is not an Adobe Animate clone. It is not a one-for-one thing. There are some similarities here and there, but overall they are very different pieces of software. Adobe Animate, I feel like, is kind of a fully featured animation software that does a lot of different things and really focused around the timeline and the library and tweens and that sort of thing. Moho, on the other hand, definitely focused on character rigs and building your animations around that. You can do some of the other things like frame by frame animation, and there's some mesh tools and there's special effects tools, things like that. But the rigging is what Moho is really focused on. And there are a lot of you trying Adobe Animate alternatives right now. I am one of them. Since they announced that it was dead and then brought it back to life the next day, I started searching for alternatives because who knows how long Animate's gonna last. And looking at the other software options available, there's a ton of frame-by-frame animation tools. For example, Procreate Dreams on the iPad or some of the other iPad apps out there, they're really designed to create that frame-by-frame animation. That's great. I'm looking for something a little bit more streamlined. I like to use little pieces of animation in my videos that I post here. And so when I look at animation, when I'm creating any kind of animated bit or piece for these videos, I need it to kind of cross two lines. One, it needs to be good enough. It doesn't need to be great, but it has to be good enough, and it also has to be like time effective. And it's really hard to hit those two things because I can spend weeks on something and make it better, then I'm not going to get as many videos out. And for me, Animate really filled that gap. And I think Moho has the opportunity to do that too. What other software is out there? I was also looking into Toon Boom Harmony, which looks amazing and awesome and does a lot of things. There are really two things that held me back there. The first thing is the price. When we're looking at the subscription page here, for Harmony Essentials, it's $30 a month. I think I would need Harmony Advanced. That's $77 a month. That's more than what I'm paying for the entire Adobe Animation Suite. I'm not ready to make that kind of commitment. Just looking at the tools they have, I think that's what I need. They do have the vector tools in the Essentials. They don't have the bitmap tools. You can't do 4K export and that sort of thing. So I think I would need that advanced thing. Hopefully I wouldn't need the premium. That's $140 a month. These are pretty good prices if you're working in an animation studio and this is what you're doing full time. For me, a hobbyist, too expensive. The second thing about Toon Boom Harmony that kind of held me back a little bit is I heard that the learning curve is a lot harder than Moho's learning curve. Then there's Blender. Everybody's recommending Blender because everybody loves Blender. I love Blender. The problem is when we look at that quality versus time thing, Blender really drags down on that time. Does amazing things, is really fun to use, but there's no way I could produce something in a reasonable amount of time, even if I had a really nice rig and that sort of thing. It's just a little too cumbersome. Maybe if I knew Blender inside and out, but that's not happening anytime soon. And that's where this comes in. This is Moho. Moho is really fun and really awesome, and I've been running through some of the tutorials. In fact, the minute that Adobe Animate announced that they were going to cancel that program, I immediately that night started learning something new, and Moho was the first one I jumped into. Moho has a 30-day trial. I'm still on the trial. I think right now they have like $100 off. Let me check. Pricing. Take me to pricing. What do we have here? So right now you could pick it up. It's $3.99, so you could pick it up for $100 less. So we're talking $300 to use the software. That's not bad. They have Moho Debut 14. I don't know how stripped down that is. I've been using the Pro, and it has all the features that I want. So at this point, I'm most of the way through the 30-day trial. I have jury duty over the next 2 weeks, so I don't think I'm actually going to be able to finish all these tutorials in time. So I think I'm going to have to buy it. Who knows? I'm lazy. I'll get around to it eventually, I think. But it fits what I'm trying to do because I can build a character, I can build a rig, and then I can take it from video to video and I can animate it and do all that kind of fun stuff. This is the little rig I've been working on. Oh man, I added the mesh, and so he's moving around kind of goofy, but he was pretty cool yesterday. Let's delete that layer and see what happens to him. Okay, now when I grab his hands and move him around, okay, I've separated him out a little bit. They're still connected to the tail, and the tail's doing some funky stuff, but that's all right. You get the idea. This is a nice little puppet rig. This is the tutorial rig that I've been working through. What I think is really cool about these rigs is that I can go in there and I can control different parts by creating these little bones off to the side. Like, for example, this bone is controlling her eyes. This is another one of their demo puppets. And when I drag the bone up, I make her eyes bigger. I can drag it down and make her eyes smaller. I also have one for the pupils, so I could move the pupils up and down, or I can move the pupils left and right. And you can create entire characters and rigs and puppets this way, where you're controlling different things, the arms and the legs and that sort of thing. You can map your mouth shapes to one of these, so when you go frame to frame, you can just adjust these little things on each frame instead of having to go in and move each bone incrementally on your own. When I'm talking about speed, this is exactly the type of thing that I was looking for. Now, I mentioned this is not a replacement, a full replacement for Adobe Animate. It works very different, but it has enough of what Animate's doing that if I learn it, when I learn this, I think it can be a replacement, but there is a pretty steep learning curve. Since we are in the middle of the video, I do want to shout out my courses over at bradsartschool.com. Learn to Draw in 60 Days is really designed for beginners. If you've taken other art tutorials and you thought, man, what am I missing? Why is this so hard? It fills in some of those gaps so you can jump into some of those harder tutorials down the road. If you'd like to learn more about that class or my other classes, I'll link that down below over at bradsartschool.com. One thing that is incredibly time consuming when you're doing any kind of animation, even if you're doing it with like a frame picker like Moho has or Animate has, is going place by place, listening for the sound of what vowel or what consonant you're using at any point on the timeline, and then changing the mouth as you go. That's a really time-consuming process no matter what app that you're using. So Adobe Animate analyzes that audio and then tries to put the mouth shapes to that, basically an auto lip sync feature, and it's okay. I learned to design around it. Basically, I focused on creating a character, a mustache for my character, so that way when he talked, the mustache was doing most of the flapping instead of you looking at like the shape of his mouth quite as much. But even with that, I did have to go in and tweak it manually and change some places where it just looked completely off. This has the same kind of feature, but I think it's worse. It actually adds too many mouth shapes, so I'm probably not going to be using that at all. That's definitely going to slow me down a bit, but maybe I can find some workarounds using a puppet so that I'm not necessarily doing a lot of lip syncing, but the character's still acting it out a little bit. I have to play around. There are some really cool rigs here. I have the Kushi rig open right here, and as you can see, as I move her head, you can see what's happening with her hair. They've added these individual strands in there, so they are kind of moving in relation to the head, but it adds that just a little bit, that touch of animation that you're looking for while the character's talking. It's very easy to do that sort of thing. And if I go down to File, Import Library, there's a whole bunch of characters that you can work with and play with that other people have created, so you can see how it works and what Moho can do. I don't know what I'm getting, so let's open up Mahoney and see what we have. Let me zoom in a little bit. Let's hit play and see what this character does. I'm gonna go ahead and hit play. This one is called Mahoney. I just opened it up. I've never looked at this before, but you can see how they're using kind of those bone rigs to get the legs and the arms and the body to kind of move, and you have all of your keyframes along the bottom that show what is moving and when. Plus you can add like individual bones to the hair, so if the character moves back, you can add a little bit of bounce to the hair. You could add a lot of bounce if you want to. The wild thing is, as I was looking for tutorials, the best tutorials that are out there right now are actually Moho's own tutorials. There are only a handful of other people out there right now making content around this app. This is their website, which has a lot of like written tutorials if you want to follow those, but there's some great video tutorials on their YouTube channel. They just posted this one the other day, so let's take a look at this. This is another one of those models where you can see how they're adding like some subtle animations. Some of it is rig based, some of it is mesh based. Sometimes you can change, like they'll import different hand shapes in there, so you can see here how the hand is twisting. So they're adding all of these little subtle touches to this character. This is a cool one. This is a little fox character that's riding a pig. And you can see like they've got it in a quasi 3D environment, so you can kind of pivot around and move things. And here's the mesh tool at play. They're playing with the nose a little bit. You can squash and stretch the characters. I guess you can also use this to create video game assets if you want to. I would probably be just using it for like video assets, but cool stuff. A lot of options available here. So here's the finished animation. I think it looks really cool. The pig's going to jump over this little log here. Yeah, nice little animation. You can do it. There we go. We got a jump. This one is amazing. This dog is crazy. To think that this is an actual rig and you've got all your sections in there. I'm used to rigs being kind of on a 2D plane, but they've rigged this one up on a 3D plane. It's pretty amazing. Also, a lot of the drawing tools that you see here are vector brushes, which tend to scale a little bit better when you're using animations. You can draw in the app, or you can import your own files from outside the app, which is probably what I would do. So what are my concerns with using Moho? Well, I talked about it at the beginning, that whole idea of how much time is it going to take me to do something versus what is the quality that I'm able to produce. And I feel like Moho can do amazing things, but I also feel like my skills and ability in this program, and just as an animator in general, is probably not up to the task at this point in time. And the reason I say that is I am not the biggest fan of a lot of rigged animation. I feel like rigged animation can look kind of cheapish to me. The examples I've been showing I think are really high quality and it looks amazing, but those are rigs that are really in the hands of really talented animators with lots of skill and lots of years and work under their belt who really know what they're doing. I am very much a noob who is playing around with these programs, and I'm a little worried that when I create a rig, it's going to look really plasticky and bendy, and it's not going to look the way I want it to look. Even though it's a lot more time consuming, I think it's easier, at least for me personally, to get something that looks halfway decent when I'm going frame by frame or kind of pretending like I'm going frame by frame with my animation. In my early experience, I know it's only been like 2.5 weeks, but my early experience playing with these rigs is that I don't know enough about animating to really bring them to life in a way that I think reaches that bar of quality I'm looking for. So this is a contender. I'm still learning. I'm enjoying myself in the process. What do you think? Have you tried Moho? Are you interested in trying Moho? I'll leave a link down to the trial down below. They're not paying me for this. This is just me experimenting. They don't know I exist. They may now after they watch this video. This is just something that I'm interested in. I think has some really awesome results and a lot of potential for me personally once I get up to speed. But what do you think? Have you tried it yet? Let me know down below, down in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you in a couple of days.